Hey audio friends, MrAyrit here. Welcome back to the channel. Got a stack review for you today, and this is from Geshelli, the Florida-based company that makes some pretty cool little amps and DACs here. So we got the E2 amp and the J2 DAC. You can see I've got the wood versions of each of these here, and we're going to talk about what these guys sound like and maybe some comparisons. So let's dig into these Geshelli products. So first of all, let's just kind of look at the build here of these things. And I mean, the build quality is okay. It's nothing really outstanding. I mean, the wood is cool. It looks very nice, but as far as just pure quality goes, I mean, it's not a premium build, I wouldn't say. Okay. So I have a couple of gripes with the build on each of these. The number one thing with this amp is the rubber feet here uses like these little O-rings, and for whatever reason my amp, like, they come out very easily, and so it leaves them. I've lost them a couple times, but luckily I've been able to find them. But that's been just like a minor frustration for me with the E2. Now the J2, it has the same footings on them, but I never had an issue with this one. So I'm sure you could put a little adhesive or something on there and it would fix it. But that was just, you know, it was a little gripe that I have with them. Now my gripe with the J2, again, this is the darker wood, and this one's, the wood again is great. It looks awesome. But I had a nut, if you can hear that, fell off from inside the board somewhere. Again, I think I know where it came from. It's just a simple matter of me opening it up and putting it back on. Not a huge deal, but just, you know, something to note. So with that being said, I do love the way this stack looks. I think it's very cool. I like how you can change the LED color from inside, and I know Geshelli is really great about like customizing these units. So, you know, you can get metal cases of any color you want. You can get wood of several different colors. You can get the plexiglass, lots of different colors. So there's lots of different options for how you can configure these, and that's pretty cool that you can kind of like get one custom made to your preferences. So with that being said, let's talk about kind of a tour of each device, inputs, outputs, you know, how they work, things like that, and then we'll get into sound. First of all here, before we get into anything else, just the power supply. They both use these little power bricks here, and so they're interchangeable. So just so you know, that's what they look like. Let's talk about the DAC first, and because there's a little more going on with that, and then we'll get into the E2 and some specs and things like that. So just a quick tour here. We've got the front, you've got power button, input button, and then so you push the power to, you hold the power to turn it on and off, and then you push it to change the LED color. Input, you push the button, and it has a series of little LEDs here that light up in different combinations depending on what source you're picking and things like that. So you've got optical, and coax in on the front here, and then on the back you've got those same optical coax here. You got USB in there, RCA out, XLR out, and then your power in. And then on the amp, you've got power and LED there, and you've got input gain here, and again you've got a couple of status indicators there depending on what gain stage you're in. Only balance headphone out, and then there's your little volume pot right there. On the back, balanced in, balanced out, so you can use this as a preamplifier if you want. Power in. Oh, I should also talk about on the J2 DAC, one thing that I like is it doesn't have its own volume knob or anything like that, but it's got 3 different gain stages. So it's got a low gain, a medium gain, and a high gain. And for me, that's enough. Like, I do appreciate having at least that little bit of functionality. So if you're using like a tube amp or something like that that has really high gain, you can at least set the DAC to a lower gain. I don't need super fine control, but I do appreciate being able to change the level coming out of the DAC at least a little bit. So good on Geshelli for including that feature. So one of the things, like talking about the DAC here a little bit, and again, if you saw my last video that I did a few different Delta Sigma DACs, I talked about like the differences that can come from even using DACs with the same chips. Well, that also applies to the Geshelli J2 because it uses that same DAC chip that like the SML SU6 uses and that the Soundcause SDG1 uses. It uses the 9038 like 2QM or something like that, right, from ESS. But all three of these DACs sound very different, and they're all using the same DAC chip. So just keep in mind that just because a certain DAC has a certain chip in it, that doesn't give you the whole story. I would argue that it actually tells you almost none of the story, really, except maybe like what decoding options you have, okay? So as far as sound signature of the DAC, I actually thought there were a couple of things that I observed with the J2 that just makes it stand out a little bit. Number one, it has a richer sound to it than most of the Delta Sigma DACs I've heard, especially when I was comparing SU6, Soundcause, the VMV1 D1 or the VMV D1 SE. The Geshelli was the richest of the bunch out of those Delta Sigma DACs. Okay, so noticeably more kind of mid-heft to it, and then I would say a little bit rolled off in the treble regions. Okay, so that was quite noticeable for me. The other thing that was, interestingly enough, very noticeable, and usually I don't hear a big difference when I change the bit rates in my computer. So if you go into your Mac and MIDI settings, you can change, 24, 96, 16, 41, 44, 1, whatever. Usually when I change those, I don't notice like any difference, honestly, when I'm switching back and forth, or very, very little. With the Geshelli J2, I was thinking it wasn't a very resolving DAC, honestly. Like I thought, like, wow, this doesn't sound quite right. Like it just isn't resolving as well as my other stuff. I switched it to 24192, I think, when I was listening to Apple Lossless, and whoa, it cleared up significantly. And that's the first time with a DAC that I've changed that setting in my computer, and I've really noticed like a big difference when I made that change. So that was just something that I thought I would note here. So just the main thing of note with the J2 is just it is noticeably richer than some of the other Delta Sigma DACs. Most of the other Delta Sigma DACs, I would say. Okay, so let's talk about the E2 now, and let's get into its sound signature a little bit. First of all, just a couple of quick specs here for you. So I'm not going to go through the specs as far as like THD and all that stuff. It's a clean measuring amp is all you need to know with that. But the power rating is 2 watts per channel at 32 ohms. Okay, so it's a reasonably powerful amplifier. And you shouldn't have problems driving pretty much anything really out of them. I mean, there might be a few exceptions to that rule, but in general, it should pretty well have the ability to drive most headphones. So the sound signature of this is while it is a clean DAC and noticeably less sharp than something like, say, like a THX amp or something like that, where I feel like the E2 falls behind some of the other amps that I have on hand, Feliks Audio Echo, Schiit Mjolnir Gen 1, Liquid Platinum, so things that are not crazy overpriced compared to this. I mean, they're more expensive amps, but not by a ton. Is dynamics is the big thing that I noticed. As far as detail retrieval and things, I thought the E2 did just fine, but I did feel like timid is the word that kept coming to my mind when I was listening to the E2. It just never seemed to really give my headphones that punch and just a real engaging dynamic sound to them. I always felt it sounded clean, but it was missing something for me personally. And so when you pair that with the J2, like I just found that stacked together to not offer like a really great dynamic experience, and I guess that's something that maybe I'm finding that I really enjoy. So again, as far as the price point at a couple $100, I think it's a perfectly fine clean amp that I would certainly take over something like an SP200 or a 789. I would take the E2 over those in a heartbeat. No question about that, right? But I think if you're willing to spend a little bit more on something like, say, again, like a used liquid platinum, or, you know, look for something with something that's maybe a little more interesting, like the Schiit Mjolnir Gen 1, you're going to be able to get a lot more dynamics out of your headphones. And depending on what headphones you're using, that can make a pretty big difference in the listening experience. I think that's really all I have to say about the E2. Everything else about it was fine. Soundstage was fine. Imaging was fine. All that. Just when it came to dynamics, it just fell a little flat for me. By no means a bad amplifier. The DAC, again, is a little bit on the richer side, so if that appeals to you, I could certainly recommend going for that. And I think that's really where I'm going to leave it with this stack. So it's okay stuff. It just didn't wow me or grip me in any special way in particular, outside of the beautiful wood cases, which are very, very cool. And definitely my style. But for me, these are going to be a sell. I'm going to push them on down the road. I bought them myself, so I just wanted to try them out, and I wanted to see them in person, I guess, too, because I do like the wood look. I'm kind of a sucker for that kind of stuff. So with that being said, I think I'm going to end that review. And because this review is a little bit shorter, I wanted to start introducing, and we'll see what you think about this, like kind of an unrelated section at the end of some of these videos, just with other things that I have going on, you know, cool movies I've watched, cool series I've watched, cool games I'm playing, just things like that. And so what I wanted to tell you about was a game called It Takes Two, and it's on Xbox Game Pass, so it's free to play on there if you do the Game Pass Ultimate. But it's a co-op game, and what I wanted to recommend it is because it's just really fun and well done, and it's an interesting take on like a lot of different kind of video game tropes, but it does it in a really unique way. And while it's a game that I was able to play with my 6-year-old son and we beat it, it's not like a little kid game, even though it's kid friendly. So he was able to control it just fine, but it still offered a good amount of challenge even for me. Plus, it was just fun to play through cooperatively, and we had to communicate a lot and stuff like that. So if you've got somebody, a buddy or a child that you like to game with, that's definitely one that I would recommend that you check out. And specifically, check out this footage from a music level that they had in the game, and as an audio lover, I just really thought it was neat all the way they incorporated a bunch of just the audio gear in unique ways to build these levels out and stuff like that. So that's just one example of a level. There were lots more that all have kind of like different themes and things like that, but that one was definitely my favorite, and since you're here, I'd assume you'd probably enjoy it too, specifically that audio level. So definitely check that out if you get the chance. And with that being said, I thank you for your time, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.